To all my friends, philosophers, guides, and mentors, today I will be enlightening you all on what philosophy is. So, in its truest sense, philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, and it is a theory or attitude that acts as a guiding principle for behavior. In philosophy, we have something known as Stoicism, and who inculcated this theory of Stoicism? It was Zeno of Citium. So Zeno was stranded far away from his home without any of his belongings or money. He was a prosperous merchant but lost all of his valuable possessions when his ship sank near Athens somewhere around 300 BCE. He then took up an interest in philosophy and in particular in Socrates. Zeno created the philosophy of Stoicism where he began spreading his own teachings to the people. So, Stoicism teaches us about self control and tolerance through the virtues. The name of the philosophy Stoicism comes from the Stoa Poikile, which was the meeting place where Zeno and his students gathered for discussions and teachings. Stoic is now used to describe someone who does not stress under pressure and avoids the extremes of emotion. Stoicism, however, is more than just this attitude and is more of a way to think and go about life, like all philosophy. The Stoic belief in the dichotomy of control is that everything is controlled by cause and effect, which is termed logos. People do not always have control over the things and events that happen during their lifetimes, but they do have control over how they choose to perceive these events. A Stoic is someone who does not think of the world as a perfect place but is more realistic and looks at things the way they are instead of being idealistic. So you must be wondering what are the virtues I previously spoke about. So the first is wisdom, which is being able to address a complex and difficult situation with knowledge and information and a calm state of self. The second is moderation, which shows self-restraint and balance in all things done in life. The third is justice, which is looking at people without hate or prejudice, even if they have done wrong, and treating them fairly with a calm state of mind. The fourth is courage, which is facing the challenges of even daily life and sometimes the extraordinary challenges without panic and with clarity in mind. I have used some Stoicism recently to help find resolve to get me through a severe muscle injury on my left leg. I use the virtues of courage and moderation to help myself stay healthy while being told to exercise very little by eating foods that are only healthy and by exercising a little bit every day so I do not become unfit. Seneca was a Roman who believed in Stoicism and called for humane and fair treatment for all slaves. They were treated like property in Rome, and he apprised people about how we all share the same innate humanity and we are no different from each other. He once wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." Marcus Aurelius was one of the Roman emperors and Stoic professors who reigned over Rome for 19 years. He used the philosophy of Stoicism to give him the strength and courage to drive the Roman Empire through two major wars while losing a lot of his children. Nelson Mandela was someone who also used Stoic philosophy to help him find resolve to get through his 27-year imprisonment by reading the writings left behind by Marcus Aurelius. Mandela eventually won his war for racial equality in South Africa and championed peace and settlement between the people. He believed that even though the past wrongs were certainly not justifiable, they could not be changed. People could look to the present and change themselves for a better future. Epictetus was a slave who was turned into a Stoic teacher. He once wrote, "We suffer not from the events in our lives but from our judgment about them." This has majorly inspired current therapy, where therapists try to remove the adverse attitudes people form about their lives. He was born in Hierapolis, modern-day Pamukkale in Turkey. He was brought to Rome, or acquired, which is where his name comes from, where Epictetus means acquired. He was brought to the court as a slave, but left as a free man by the king. He went around then preaching his teachings of Stoicism. For these actions of his, he was beaten by the people who did not want to listen to him and thought of him only as a nuisance. So, he thought about opening his own school to teach people who did actually want to learn. He did well until he and all the other Stoics were kicked out of Rome by the Emperor Domitian. He moved to Nicopolis in Greece, reopened a school, and became an extremely famous teacher in Stoicism. He famously wrote, "I have to die. If it is now, well then I die now. If it is later, then now I will take my lunch, since the hour for lunch has arrived, and dying I will tend to later. Death is not what he worries about, but lunch is. This is because you know you will eventually die, and that you cannot control. However, lunch is under your control. I talked about the dichotomy of control, but here is how Epictetus would explain it. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, motivation, desire, and in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, and in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. You must be thinking that I do have power over my own body, property, and reputation, since you can choose a healthy lifestyle with exercise and healthy eating habits. But that is not your control if a deadly virus were to take you out, or if you were to meet with an accident and injure yourself. Then you cannot dictate how quickly you will heal. That is something you can only minutely help with eating habits, and that is mostly decided by your body. The main idea is that you can choose to change your body and reputation, but in the end, the main outcome remains the same. This means that you should not worry about the outcome, for example, of a broken hand from the accident, but you can worry about the effort you put into healing that hand and making the recovery time as little as possible by eating healthier things that your body needs in excess to heal the broken bone. An example given by famous professor Massimo Pigliucci is to imagine that you are hitting a target as an archer. Under your control is practicing archery, where you can choose to practice for hours and hours to master the skill. You can also choose high quality equipment and properly maintain it. But other than that, you do not have much control over anything else. The wind can misplace an arrow and the target can move unanticipatedly. If it is a soldier or enemy, this teaches us that you must grade yourself not on the outcome but the preparation that you took to reach the outcome. In practicality, this has many ways to be used. For example, if for a student such as myself, I am looking for a good grade on a submission. Now that grade is not within my control. The teacher could have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed and be in a bad mood, and so the grade does not go over as well as I thought it would. That is not up to me. What is up to me is how I prepared for the submission, and if I gave that submission all the time and effort I could have given it, and if the submission came out just the way I wanted it to. That is where I should focus. Or thinking in terms of friendship. Now, all of us want to have a good group of friends who enjoy each other's company, but that is not in our control. It is up to the person who may want to be friends with us or not. What is in our control is to be a friendly, outgoing, and helpful person and not be snide and rude and sheltered. Then it is their decision whether to be with us or not. Epictetus says that if you take this mindset and apply it to your life, you will live happily. This is because a lot of happiness stems from serenity. He says if you have the right idea about what really belongs to you and what does not, which is what you can control and what you cannot, you will never be the subject to force or hindrance. You will never blame anyone or criticize anyone, and everything you do will be done willingly. Another important aspect where Stoic philosophy can be implemented are the roles, which we all play in life, and the happiness that can come from balancing these roles. There are three types of roles. Your role as a human being, which is your duty to be a positive impact on all humans, and your duty to take care of the earth that we live on. Your second role is the role that you are given to. For example, being a grandparent, son, or sister. And then the third role is the role that you choose, which is your career, parenthood, and others like that. You should always prioritize your role as a human and ask yourself if what you're doing is truly good for humanity. The other two roles are ones that you have to balance, and that is where Stoic philosophy helps you. Epictetus wrote about a father who is very troubled because his daughter is sick. He leaves the house and leaves his wife to deal with their daughter. Epictetus asked the father whether he was right in the way that he acted, and the father replied that he was troubled and it was his natural reaction and he could not help it. That is the distinction between your feelings, which are natural and cannot be controlled, and your duty as a father, which you are ethically obligated to do. The two virtues that you need here are courage to stay and face the situation, and is justice to treat the sick daughter in a just and correct way. So you balance roles, and balancing those roles takes the two other virtues. practical wisdom, and temperance. Epictetus explains that reflecting on the other social roles that we play. If you're young, what does being young mean? If you are old, what does age imply? If you are a father, what does fatherhood entail? Each of our titles suggests the acts appropriate to it. Another famous example from Professor Massimo Pigliucci is to imagine being an actor with a role that is not determined for you. You can play the role however you want to, but you still have to play the role, and along with the role come certain duties. Now, how can you improve yourself in terms of the roles that you play is to think of people who do these roles well, and you can look up to them as role models. People of ancient Rome used to think of an imaginary role model named Cato the Younger. He was the perfect human with a perfect level of integrity. People used him as an excuse when they did something and said not everyone can be a Cato. That is true, but you can try. We do have some modern role models who we can choose to look up to. My personal favorite modern role model is Nelson Mandela, who I mentioned before spent 27 years in jail in his fight for racial equality in South Africa. He was immensely angered during his imprisonment period, but one of the biggest changes to his ways of thinking came when one of his cellmates smuggled in a copy of Marcus Aurelius's book Meditations. Mandela read and understood that the way to the future would not be through more hatred and violence, but through growth. And he wanted growth for even the people that made him suffer. Like in performances in the ancient world, actors wear masks, not only to tell the audience who they are, but also to tell themselves who they are. Just like them, we should also wear a different number of masks. The concept is that a happy life is one that is well balanced, where you can play these different roles the best you can play them. Thank you very much for listening to my speech.